If you care about fiscal responsibility and restraining the reach of the federal government, if you care about nonsense legislation pushed through at the last minute when nobody's looking that have huge ramifications for our country and national security for years to come, then you'll hate the phrase that's being bounced around Washington, D.C. this month: lame duck session of Congress, especially an outgoing Congress. Nancy Pelosi's last hurrah. Joe Biden's going to sign whatever she wants, and they're trying to sneak in a bunch of garbage. Joining us right now to sift through it and maybe raise some red flags is Jessica Anderson. She's the executive director of Heritage Action for America. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm not overstating the case. This is, it's legendary. They try to throw the kitchen sink through, and they often get it through. What's the biggest problem you see right now coming out of this session?
That's right, Larry. Well, lame duck has historically been a dumpster fire for whatever the party in power that's usually outgoing can jam through any of their wish list items that they never got through Congress through regular order. So here we are with 20 some odd days left in the calendar year, and Democrats in the House are frankly lit up to get as much through as possible. So we're looking at a National Defense Authorization Act. We're looking at a potential spending bill in the form of an omnibus, could turn into a CR. We're looking at the Disrespect for Marriage Act that's poised to go through this week. And we're looking at a number of tax extenders, green climate energy provisions, and that just starts the list of what we call a Christmas tree that's on tap this December.
Let's start with this thing called the Eagle Act. I love the way they name these things. Everybody likes eagles, right? It's the emblem of our nation. Who would be against the Eagle Act? Well, what does the Eagle Act really do?
So the Eagle Act is a misnamed, in my opinion, bill that the House has floated around for a number of years. But what it technically does is it removes the per country cap for the number of migrants that would move here to the United States. And so they're trying to do this in the context of Chinese espionage at the highest it's ever been, with the CCP trying to take over America. They're trying to do this when our southern border is more porous and out of control than ever before. So in a policy vacuum where we're just talking about encouraging legal migration to the United States, sure, let's have a conversation about that. Let's have a policy discussion about it. But don't jam a bill through that puts Chinese spies in the United States at a level that is completely unguarded for the realities of the CCP against the United States. And certainly don't move a bill like the Eagle Act through when our immigration crisis is at the border is at an all-time high. The border is porter, there's no enforcement judges, there's no real security. So we basically can't do something like this in the context of what our American interests are today.
Yeah, well said. And it's so ironic that anytime you raise the border problem and you say to the White House, why aren't you enforcing the border? Their response is, yeah, sure, we'll get to that if the Republicans agree to comprehensive immigration reform, which is really just amnesty. So they're unable to enforce the border unless there's this comprehensive immigration reform, but they'll go ahead and willy-nilly raise the caps on incoming migrants to this country without the benefit of actually going through any sort of regular process. And why would we be increasing the numbers of people coming from the CCP right now? I mean, we've got an existential problem with communist spies coming in from China.
Yeah, the best analogy I can come up with is what the left is trying to do right now is they're trying to add an addition to the house while the house is burning in flames. So why would we not put the fire out first, fix our problems, and then talk about adding the addition? I mean, let's be logical here. But again, the radical left has no form of common sense or logic. And so we're jammed with all of these policy priorities that they've wanted to get through the last 2 years, and they're going to use this lame duck to stop it unless we have bold conservative leadership in the House and in the Senate saying no.
All right. So the first thing everyone needs to do is let their representative and their senator know no to the Eagle Act, draw the line on this thing. And by the way, you can also let them know that through a lot of really cool activist vehicles over there at Heritage Action for America. Also, you mentioned an omnibus spending package. Why on earth would Republicans in the House and Senate agree to an omnibus spending package, locking them in? They're about to be in the majority in less than a month. Why not just do a continuing resolution? And then when you're in charge of the House, you're in charge of the purse strings, you can go into regular order and actually work through a budget in the normal process.
That's exactly right. And the timeline that you just described is what conservatives, it's what Heritage Action in particular have been calling for months now. We knew that the November election was going to change the tide. Obviously, we would have loved to have seen a much larger Republican majority going into the new House, but we still have it. Nancy Pelosi's gavel is still retired. And there is no mandate from the American people to the Democrat Party today to jam through more higher spending and woke policy priorities that they have that are embedded in these spending deals and in these budgets. And so our position has been very clear. Don't negotiate and don't pass any legislation during the lame duck. Instead, let's move a clean CR that gets the funding levels of this year into next year, and then allow the new speaker, the new leadership team to have an actual fight representing the American people and what we want, which is we want to shrink the size of the federal government. We want to cut spending, and we want to rid the budget of these woke policies that don't put our American families, interests, or businesses first.
Yeah, and go through that budget process in regular order, committee by committee, not one giant package that's negotiated behind closed doors.
Yeah, and also give members of Congress the chance to read the bills. This is what a huge problem has been with the budget and spending process over the last few years, and certainly under Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's leadership, is they write these bills behind closed doors, they put them all together and bundle them, and then they give them to rank and file members with less than a day to read hundreds of pages of legislation. This sort of process needs to be out in the open, it needs to be regular order, and there needs to be time for members of Congress to read what it is that they're voting for. They will not do that in the lame duck. They can do that next year.
Lots of information on all of this, by the way, at the website for Heritage Action for America. So not only can you get educated and informed, you can share that information and then be an activist. That's the cool thing about Heritage Action. Action, get it? Action. What about the Defense Authorization Act? I mean, of course, Republicans and conservatives are going to want to support our troops. They're going to want to put more money if they can into the Defense Authorization Act. Does this look reasonable, what they're negotiating right now?
So we're in the middle of negotiations presently, but the biggest win that's actually coming from the NDAA is that leadership in the House, Republican leadership in the House, listened to conservatives demanding that the vaccine mandate be repealed. And so if you recall, 2 years ago, under President Biden's new administration, he put a vaccine mandate in place for our American servicemen and servicewomen. We want to see that repealed. And then we want to go even further one day to have those soldiers that have been kicked out and discharged from the military reinstated. The NDAA takes that first big step, which is to say that it repeals the vaccine mandate. So we're thrilled. That's a win for conservatives. As of now, it's poised to stay in the bill, as well as the NDAA has pulled out a number of provisions that conservatives have been opposed to for years, including Draft Our Daughters, the Manchin permitting bill, the woke DEI language. All of that has been reduced. So I actually think we could be in a position where we're comfortable with the NDAA moving forward, so long as they keep the vaccine repeal language included in the final product. So that's why we have to stay vigilant. Great. Activists need to call, and we need to stay informed the next 10 days.
Yeah, we just spoke with Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who was part of spearheading the revocation of that mandate earlier this week. So it's good to see that that went through. Good news for the military, almost as good a news as Navy beating Army tomorrow in the football game. Right? Right, Jessica? Go Navy, right?
Go Army.
We're all out of time, Jessica. Thanks so much for joining us. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.